Haste creates the illusion of progress. You think you are moving forward because you are constantly doing something, switching tasks, starting new plans, chasing faster results. It feels productive. It feels like momentum. But most of the time, it is just noise. Haste gives you the sensation of progress without the substance of it. You move quickly, but you do not go deep. You touch many things, but you master none. And because you are always in motion, you never stop long enough to notice that nothing is actually changing. Your brain rewards speed. Every quick action, every small completion releases a sense of satisfaction. But that satisfaction is misleading. It is not tied to real growth. It is tied to activity. And activity is not the same as evolution. Real progress is slower than you expect. It requires repetition, reflection, and discomfort. It demands that you stay in one place long enough to understand it, to struggle with it, to refine it. That is something haste does not allow. When you are always rushing, you are escaping depth. You avoid the part where things get difficult, where confusion appears, where real learning begins. Instead, you jump to the next thing, convincing yourself you are advancing. But evolution is not built on speed. It is built on consistency, applied with intention. And the moment you slow down enough to focus, you start to see what haste has been hiding from you this entire time. Speed replaces depth. You move fast because it feels efficient. You believe that doing more in less time puts you ahead. But speed has a cost, and that cost is depth. When you rush, you do not fully process what you are doing. You execute, but you do not understand. You complete tasks, but you do not absorb the lessons behind them. And without depth, nothing truly sticks. Your mind needs time to build connections. Learning is not just exposure, it is integration. It is the process of taking something unfamiliar, struggling with it, making mistakes, and slowly turning it into something natural. Speed interrupts this process. From a neurological perspective, deep learning requires repetition with attention. When you move too fast, your brain does not reinforce the pathways needed for mastery. You end up with fragmented knowledge, surface-level skill, and inconsistent performance. This is why you can spend hours doing something and still feel like you are not improving. It is not a lack of effort. It is a lack of depth. Speed also creates an illusion of competence. You get used to starting things quickly, but you rarely stay long enough to refine them. And without refinement, there is no precision. Without precision, there is no mastery. Slowing down is not about doing less. It is about doing things fully. Staying with the process until you understand not just what to do, but why and how it works. Because real growth does not come from how fast you move. It comes from how deeply you engage. Perfection becomes paralysis. You tell yourself you want to do things the right way. You want quality, precision, something that truly represents your potential. But if you are honest, that is not always what is happening. Perfection often becomes an excuse. Not a conscious one, but a subtle strategy your mind uses to delay exposure. Because once you act, you can be judged. Once you show your work, it can be criticized. And perfection gives you a way to postpone that moment. So you keep adjusting. You keep refining. You keep waiting for the right time when everything feels ready. But that moment never arrives. Not because you are incapable, but because perfection is not a finish line. It is a moving target. From a psychological perspective, this is avoidance disguised as high standards. Your brain is trying to protect you from discomfort, from uncertainty, from the possibility of failure. And it does that by convincing you that you are just not ready yet. But while you wait, nothing evolves. Skill is not built in isolation. It is built through action, feedback, and correction. Without exposure, there is no data. Without data, there is no improvement. Perfection creates pressure. It makes every step feel heavier than it should be. And that pressure slows you down, not because the task is difficult, but because the expectation is unrealistic. The shift happens when you stop aiming for perfect and start aiming for real. Real action, real feedback, real progress. Because evolution does not reward perfection, it rewards execution. Urgency is driven by fear. You say you want to move fast because you are focused, because you are ambitious, because you do not want to waste time. But if you look deeper, urgency is rarely about clarity. It is about fear. Fear of falling behind. Fear of not being enough. Fear of watching others move forward while you feel stuck. And instead of facing that fear, you respond with acceleration. You try to compensate by doing more, faster. You rush decisions. You jump between paths. You push yourself into constant motion, believing that speed will close the gap you feel inside. But urgency does not come from confidence. It comes from pressure. And pressure distorts your judgment. When you act from fear, you are not choosing the best move. You are choosing the fastest escape from discomfort. And that leads to shallow decisions, inconsistent effort, and unstable progress. From a psychological standpoint, your brain shifts into a reactive state. It prioritizes short-term relief over long-term construction. It wants to resolve the tension immediately, even if the solution is weak. This is why urgency feels intense but produces fragile results. You act quickly, but without structure. You move forward, but without direction. Real growth requires a different state. Not panic, not pressure, but control. The ability to slow down, observe, and choose with intention. Because when your actions are driven by fear, you are not building something solid. You are just trying to escape something uncomfortable. And as long as that fear remains unexamined, it will keep controlling your pace. Movement without direction. You are doing a lot. You are busy, active, constantly moving. But movement alone does not mean you are getting closer to anything. Without direction, effort becomes scattered. You start multiple things, shift focus quickly, and chase whatever seems urgent in the moment. It feels like productivity, but it lacks structure. And without structure, progress becomes random. The problem is not your willingness to act. The problem is the absence of a clear path guiding that action. When you do not know exactly what you are building, every step becomes reactive instead of intentional. From a cognitive perspective, your brain prefers immediate tasks over long-term planning. It chooses what feels pressing, not what is truly important. And when you follow that pattern, you stay busy, but disconnected from meaningful progress. This creates a dangerous loop. The more you move without direction, the more you feel the need to keep moving, because stopping would force you to question whether you are actually advancing. Clarity breaks this cycle. Not vague goals, but precise direction. Knowing what matters, what does not, and where your energy should be applied. When direction is clear, your actions become selective. You stop doing everything and start doing what actually moves you forward. Because evolution is not about how much you do. It is about how aligned your actions are with where you are trying to go. And once you see that, you realize that most of your movement was never progress. Addiction to immediate results. You want results now. Not later, not eventually. Now. And that desire feels justified. Because you are putting in effort, you are showing up, you are trying. So you expect a return. But this is where the trap begins. The need for immediate results slowly turns into dependence. You start measuring your progress based on what you can see right away. If something does not give you quick feedback, quick reward, quick validation, you lose interest. Your brain is wired for this. Every small win, every visible outcome releases dopamine. It reinforces the behavior. It makes you want to repeat whatever gave you that feeling. But the problem is, most meaningful growth does not work like that. Real development is delayed. You put in effort today, and the result may only appear weeks or months later. There is no instant reward, no immediate proof. And for a mind addicted to quick results, that feels like failure. So you switch. You look for something faster, something easier, something that gives you that hit again. And without realizing it, you abandon the very process that would have made you evolve. From a neurological perspective, you are training your brain to prefer short-term gratification over long-term construction. The more you follow this pattern, the harder it becomes to stay committed to anything that requires time. Breaking this cycle requires discomfort, staying when there is no reward, continuing when there is no visible progress, trusting a process that does not immediately validate you. Because evolution is quiet in the beginning. It does not announce itself. It builds slowly beneath the surface, and if you cannot tolerate the delay, you will never reach the result. Skipping the process. You look at where you want to be and immediately try to jump there. You focus on the outcome, the final version, the result you admire. And without realizing it, you start ignoring everything that exists between where you are and where you want to be. This is where most people break their own evolution. They do not fail because they lack potential. They fail because they try to bypass the process that builds it. Every skill, every mindset, every level of discipline is constructed step by step. There are stages that feel repetitive, slow, and sometimes meaningless. But those stages are not optional. They are structural. When you skip them, you create gaps. And those gaps eventually show in inconsistency, in insecurity, in the inability to sustain results. From a psychological perspective, this is driven by outcome fixation. Your mind becomes so focused on the end that it loses respect for the path. And when the path feels too slow, you try to accelerate it artificially. But evolution cannot be rushed, because the process is not just about reaching a point. It is about becoming the person capable of sustaining that point. When you skip steps, you might reach something faster, but you cannot hold it. And what you cannot sustain, you eventually lose. Real growth requires acceptance. Acceptance that repetition is necessary. That boredom is part of mastery. That progress is often invisible while it is happening. Because the process is not in the way of the result. The process is the result being built. And once you understand that, you stop trying to escape it. Shallow effort versus real growth. You believe you are putting in effort, and you are. But not all effort leads to growth. There is a difference between doing something and developing through it. Shallow effort is when you show up without intention. You repeat actions, but your mind is not fully engaged. You go through the motions, complete the task, and move on. It feels productive, but nothing fundamentally changes. Real growth demands a different level of involvement. It requires attention, correction, and adaptation. You do not just execute, you observe what you are doing, you identify mistakes, and you adjust in real time. From a cognitive standpoint, this is the difference between passive repetition and active learning. Passive repetition reinforces what you already know. Active learning challenges it, and only one of them leads to evolution. This is why some people spend years doing the same thing and remain at the same level, while others improve rapidly in less time. The difference is not time. It is depth of engagement. Shallow effort protects you from discomfort. It allows you to say you tried without fully exposing yourself to failure. But that protection comes at a cost. You stay safe, but you stay the same. Real growth removes that safety. It forces you to confront your limitations, to face where you are weak, and to work directly on it. It is slower, more demanding, and often frustrating. But it is the only path that actually transforms you. Because evolution does not respond to how much you do. It responds to how deeply you are willing to engage with what you do. The power of slowing down. Slowing down feels wrong at first. It feels like you are losing time, falling behind, not doing enough. But that feeling is not reality. It is conditioning. You have trained yourself to associate speed with value. The faster you move, the more productive you feel. But when you slow down, something different happens. You start to see. You notice details you were ignoring. You catch mistakes earlier. You understand what you are doing instead of just repeating it. Slowing down does not reduce progress. It refines it. From a neurological perspective, attention increases when pace decreases. Your brain processes information more effectively when it is not overloaded. That is when real learning happens, not in chaos, but in focus. Slowing down also forces you to stay present. You cannot rush through discomfort. You have to sit with it, understand it, work through it, And that is where most people quit, because they are not used to staying. But staying is exactly what builds control. When you slow your pace, you gain precision. Your actions become intentional, not reactive. You stop wasting energy on unnecessary movement and start investing it where it matters. This is not about doing less. It is about doing what matters with full awareness. Because speed without clarity leads to confusion. But controlled pace creates direction, and once you experience that level of control, rushing starts to feel like a loss, not an advantage. Evolution requires patience. You want to change, but you want it to happen quickly. You want to see results, feel progress, confirm that what you are doing is working. And when that does not happen fast enough, doubt appears. You start questioning the process. You start questioning yourself. And slowly, you lose consistency. Not because you are incapable, but because you are impatient. Patience is not passive. It is not waiting without action. It is the ability to keep moving without immediate reward, to continue building even when there is no visible proof that it is working. From a psychological perspective, patience is emotional control over time. It is resisting the urge to abandon something just because it is not giving you instant feedback. And that is difficult because your brain is constantly seeking confirmation. But real evolution does not give early rewards. In the beginning, it feels like nothing is changing. You repeat, you try, you adjust, and the external result stays the same. That is where most people stop. Not because they reach their limit, but because they reach their discomfort. Those who evolve understand something different. They understand that growth is happening internally before it appears externally. That what feels like stagnation is often construction. Patience allows that construction to continue. Without it, you interrupt the process every time it starts to work. You restart, you change direction, you lose accumulated progress. But when you stay, when you commit beyond the point of immediate validation, something shifts. The results begin to appear, not suddenly, but inevitably. Because evolution is not about how fast you want it. It is about how long you are willing to sustain the process without giving up.